Before its collapse, before the rust and the ruin, this was a fortress of faith. Built in 1829, this was America's radical answer to crime, the Pennsylvania system. The idea was audacious. Lock a man away from every voice, every face, every comfort of the outside world, and force him to find God, to find penitence. They called it reform. We call it isolation. Every prisoner was intended to live in absolute, perpetual silence. They ate alone, slept alone, worked alone. Even their 1 hour of daily exercise was conducted in a tiny, walled-in yard the size of a grave, where the only sky visible was their own small patch of blue. This wasn't a prison. It was a psychological laboratory designed to dissect the human mind. And for 142 years, the terrifying experiment of Eastern State Penitentiary played out in the dark. Welcome to the birthplace of American incarceration. Welcome to the horror of solitude. The very architecture was a weapon. Every cell door was lined with heavy wood. Guards wore felt slippers. When a prisoner was moved, a hood was placed over his head. The goal was sensory deprivation so profound that a man was left with only one thing to contemplate: himself. Imagine, 4 feet wide, 12 feet long. The sounds of the world are gone. The sounds of other men are gone. The only sound is the drumming of your own heart and the creeping, insidious voice of your own mind. The brilliant author Charles Dickens visited in 1842 and found the place so disturbing, he wrote, "I believe that very few men are capable of the endurance. It is cruel and wrong. I hold this slow and daily tampering with the mysteries of the brain to be immeasurably worse than any torture of the body." The system didn't achieve penitence. It achieved breakdown. It was here that doctors first documented cases of what became known as penitentiary psychosis, a state of profound mental deterioration caused by isolation. Men began to talk to the walls. They screamed at the voices that weren't there. They scraped at their own skin just to feel something real. As the Quaker ideals crumbled under the weight of sheer population and rampant madness, the system devolved. The dream of penitence was abandoned for pure medieval punishment. The terror moved from the psychological to the physical. The guards, overwhelmed and hardened, had their own methods of ensuring order. These are not myths, they are documented atrocities. A cruel contraption placed over a prisoner's mouth, attached by chains to his wrists, which were bound behind his back. Any struggling, any movement would cause the chains to tighten, tearing his tongue or choking him. It was a tool of agonizing, suffocating obedience. The water bath. A prisoner would be chained to a wall, then drenched with ice-cold water in the dead of winter and left to freeze for hours. A slow, agonizing march toward hypothermia. And finally, the hole. Located deep beneath the prison, this was the dungeon of the dungeon. Lightless, silent, utterly devoid of warmth or sanitation. Prisoners thrown into the hole were sometimes left there for 2 weeks at a time. The physical degradation was matched only by the absolute finality of the darkness. His wasn't a punishment for the mind or the soul. This was deliberate physical terror, a reminder that within these walls, humanity had been stripped away. Eastern State's darkness even reached the most powerful figures in America. In 1929, the greatest gangster in the country, Al Capone, was admitted. Yet even within these walls, Capone purchased a privileged existence. His cell was a small palace, fine rugs, art, and a custom radio playing opera. But Capone's luxury was a grotesque exception. For the vast majority, this was a living tomb. The only salvation was escape. The legendary bank robber Willie Sutton knew that the only way out was to dig. In 1945, Sutton and 11 other men dug a 97-foot tunnel beneath the towering fortified walls. It took them over a year, working in silent, methodical shifts, scraping through rock and dirt. Their only company, the terror of being discovered. They emerged into the streets of Philadelphia, a momentary taste of freedom, a triumph of human will over the prison's terror. But even in their desperation for freedom, their actions confirmed the greatest horror of Eastern state. The human spirit, when trapped, will always break out or break down. The experiment finally ended in 1971. The last inmate was gone. The great iron gates were sealed, and for over 2 decades, Eastern State Penitentiary was completely abandoned. The silent system of the 1800s was replaced by the silence of the 1970s. But this new silence was different. It was a silence heavy with accumulated history. The elements began their work. Vines climbed the walls, trees grew from the roof lines, and the building began to surrender itself to the earth. Yet, as the walls crumbled, the stories and the feelings did not. The air itself seemed to grow thick with the concentrated misery of over a century. Visitors during this period of abandonment often described an oppressive, suffocating atmosphere. They felt watched. They felt coldness in the middle of a summer day. The place was no longer trapping bodies. It was merely holding the impression, the terrifying resonance of all the souls it had tried to break. Eastern State Penitentiary is not defined by its ruins, nor by the famous gangsters who walked its corridors. It is defined by its core, chilling premise that the human mind, deprived of society, will destroy itself. The true horror is not the ghost of a dead prisoner, but the living memory of a man driven insane by silence. It is the documented, intentional agony inflicted in the name of justice. Walk these halls today. Feel the chill that has nothing to do with the temperature. Understand the weight of the experiment, because the terror of Eastern State Penitentiary is real. It is historical, and it is a chilling monument to the day America tried to perfect punishment. Whether you believe in ghosts or merely unsolved mysteries, the Lizzie Borden. The year is 1817. The place, a quiet rural farm in Adams, Tennessee. A family lives out their days under the warm southern sun, but soon that sun would be eclipsed by a darkness so profound, so terrifying, that it would tear their lives apart, leaving behind a legend whispered in fear for generations. This isn't just a ghost story. This is a documented terror. This is the saga of the Bell family. This is the Bell Witch. And today we journey into its supposed lair, the Bell Witch Cave, to uncover America's most terrifying haunting. Our story begins with John Bell Sr., a respected farmer and devout Baptist who moved his family to a fertile stretch of land along the Red River in 1804. He built a successful life with his wife Lucy and their 9 children. It was a typical frontier existence until 1817. It started subtly. Unexplained noises, knocking on the walls, rapping on the doors. The family dismissed it as wildlife, but the disturbances escalated. They heard scratching sounds like rats dragging heavy chains coming from inside the walls. Whispers began, faint. Soon the entity grew bolder. Beds would shake violently. Blankets would be ripped from sleeping children. Objects began to move on their own. Dinner plates sliding off tables, chairs levitating. The physical assaults became horrifyingly real. Invisible hands would slap the children, leaving red welts and bruises. Betsy, in particular, suffered relentless torment. Her hair pulled, her cheeks pinched, even pins stuck into her. Then the entity spoke. At first, it was a faint, mumbling whisper. But over weeks, the voice grew stronger, clearer, morphing into various tones. An old woman, a child, even a deep, guttural growl. Kate was no ordinary poltergeist. She conversed with the family, often for hours. She knew their secrets, mimicked their neighbors, sang hymns, and quoted scripture, sometimes eloquently, sometimes with crude vulgarity. She hated John Bell with a fiery passion. This was not a haunting. It was a siege. The Bell Witch terrorized them daily, openly declaring her evil intentions, attacking them and revealing personal information that only they could have known. The family was trapped in a nightmare with nowhere to turn. News of the Bell Witch spread like wildfire. The farm became a morbid tourist attraction, with hundreds flocking to witness the inexplicable. Even Andrew Jackson, a future U.S. president, heard the tales. According to legend, as Jackson's party approached the Bell farm, their wagon mysteriously stopped, unable to move forward. After countless efforts, Jackson supposedly declared, "By the Eternal, I'd rather fight the whole British Army than contend with the Bell Witch." The witch's ultimate threat came true. On December 20th, 1820, John Bell Sr. fell ill, suffering from strange fits and unable to speak. He slipped into a coma. A vial of dark liquid was found by his bedside. The family gave the liquid to a cat, which died instantly. John Bell Sr. was buried, his death attributed by many to the malevolent entity that had tormented him. The witch had won, with John Bell Sr. dead and Betsy breaking off her engagement to Joshua Gardner. The Bell Witch's fury seemed to subside. In 1821, Kate supposedly bid farewell, promising to return in 7 years. After her final departure, the legend says the Bell Witch retreated to its eternal lair, the Bell Witch Cave. This sprawling cavern system, located on what was once Bell property, became synonymous with the entity's dark presence. Today, the Bell Witch Cave is a commercial attraction, but its legend persists. Visitors report an array of strange phenomena within its depths: sudden, inexplicable cold spots, disembodied whispers, and growls that seem to come from inside the rock. Electronic devices are said to malfunction, batteries drain rapidly, and cameras capture unexplained light anomalies. Some swear they've heard spectral voices call their names, or felt invisible hands push them from behind. The Bell Witch legend remains one of America's most compelling and terrifying true stories. It has been investigated by academics, immortalized in books and films, and debated for centuries. Was it a supernatural entity? What cannot be debated is the profound and destructive impact this invisible force had on the Bell family. It attacked their children, ruined their peace, and was widely believed to have caused the death of John. So the next time you hear a strange whisper in the dark or feel an inexplicable chill, remember the Bell Witch. Remember the family who faced an evil that defied explanation. And if you ever find yourself in Adams, Tennessee, standing before the dark maw of the Bell Witch Cave, ask yourself, she was the greatest ship in the world, a floating palace of unparalleled luxury and ambition. Beneath the elegance, a story of tragedy, war, and shadows waited to unfold. Today, she's permanently docked in Long Beach, no longer sailing but forever trapped. The RMS Queen Mary is not just a hotel, she is a cathedral of the damned. We explore the grand history and documented horror of this legendary ghost ship. Launched in 1934, the Queen Mary was a global symbol of hope and engineering. Her interiors were the pinnacle of Art Deco style, a playground for the elite. Royalty and Hollywood stars graced her polished decks every transatlantic voyage. That golden age was violently cut short by the coming storm of World War II. Stripped of her elegance, she became the Grey Ghost, the fastest troop ship afloat. She transported millions of Allied troops, often dodging U-boats in terrifying darkness. The standard capacity of 2,000 swelled to 15,000 soldiers below deck. It was a terrifying service marked by claustrophobia and inevitable tragedy. The first major tragedy was the 1942 collision with the HMS Curacoa. The Curacoa was sliced in half. Over 300 crewmen instantly died in the freezing water. The Queen Mary could not stop. Her wartime mission required her to press on, leaving them. This horrific loss remains a spiritual wound deeply ingrained in the ship's history. The spirits who remain aboard the Queen Mary are often victims of accidental death. The most famous is John, a young crewman trapped near door 13 in the engine room. During a drill, John was crushed to death in a horrifying, documented accident. Visitors report hearing terrified screams near the door, followed by a sudden cold drop. The first-class swimming pool is another terrifying hotspot for residual energy. A young girl, Jackie, is believed to have drowned here during the ship's sailing days. Guests hear giggling near the changing rooms and report seeing tiny, wet footprints. The tragedy is compounded by the spirit of an older woman who also drowned in the pool years later. Cabin B340 was so active with poltergeist phenomena, it was sealed for decades. Guests complained of levitating blankets, aggressive knocking, and objects being thrown. The cabin is linked to multiple deaths and one rumored murder committed within its walls. The second-class nursery hosts the spirit of a baby who was stillborn during a voyage. Visitors report hearing a baby's cry and feeling a profound sense of sorrow in the space. Many spirits are residual, simply reliving the final tragic moments of their lives. Today, the Queen Mary is ranked among the top 10 most haunted locations globally. Guests, staff, and investigators constantly record paranormal evidence throughout the decks. They capture EVPs, voices that seem to respond directly to their questions. In the Grand Salon, witnesses still report seeing a woman in a white gown dancing alone. Shadows of former crewmen are often seen walking the long, narrow engine room corridors. The ship's immense history means every area is saturated with residual energy and spirits. You are walking through the history of millions of souls, from glamour to terror. The Queen Mary remains docked, not retired, but permanently anchored to her dark past. Her beauty is undeniable, but her silent, spectral passengers are her true story. Do you dare visit this great ship? Are you sure you'll leave her decks alone? Don't let Here on this hallowed ground lies the heart of America's greatest tragedy, Gettysburg, where the thunder of cannon silenced a nation and the cries of the fallen never truly faded. July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 1863. 3 days that etched themselves into the very soul of this land. A clash of titans, brother against brother, nation against itself. Over 160,000 men fought here. Farmers, fathers, sons, all swept into a maelstrom of violence, terror, and unimaginable loss. When the smoke cleared, over 50,000 lay dead, wounded, or missing. This once peaceful farmland became the largest cemetery in American history. Among Gettysburg's many hotspots, Devil's Den stands out. These ancient boulders witnessed some of the most brutal, close-quarters fighting imaginable. Here, unseen hands push visitors, disembodied whispers echo between the rocks, and the distinct smell of sulfur and cigars often fills the air.
Did you feel that
The spirits, paranormal investigators frequently capture voices, even full sentences, claiming to be Confederate sharpshooters, forever bound to their final posts. Their vigilance persists. Nearby Little Round Top was the strategic key to the battle. Its slopes became a slaughterhouse, a desperate struggle for survival and strategic advantage. The desperate cries of soldiers, the thunder of musket fire, the clanging of bayonets, all are reported by witnesses, echoing from the past into the present day. Soldiers like Colonel Joshua Chamberlain, whose heroic stand here became legendary, fought with unimaginable courage. But countless beyond the battlefield, the suffering continued in the countless field hospitals. Homes, barns, and churches transformed into makeshift operating theaters, filled with pain and dread. The Farnsworth House Inn is particularly active. Guests report phantom cries, disembodied footsteps, and the overwhelming scent of ether, reminding them of the endless agony. The spirits of wounded soldiers and overworked medical staff linger, forever replaying their roles in the horrific aftermath of battle, their suffering echoing through the walls. Perhaps the most awe-inspiring and terrifying phenomenon is the Phantom Regiment. Witnesses claim to see entire battalions marching, a silent, ghostly reenactment of the charge. This is known as a residual haunting, where the energy of intense historical events is imprinted on the land itself, playing back like a terrifying silent film. The sound of distant cannon fire, the faint smell of gunpowder, the cries of battle. These experiences transport visitors back to the very moment of conflict, blurring past and present. Beyond the residual, intelligent hauntings are also common. Spirits that interact, that respond, that actively try to communicate with the living. Paranormal teams have captured direct responses, seemingly from soldiers still trapped in their final moments or searching for comrades who never returned. These intelligent entities, full of sorrow, confusion, or even anger, remind us that the individuals behind the numbers are still here, forever bound to their sacrifice. Gettysburg is more than a battlefield. It's a profound wound in American history, a place where so much energy, so much anguish was poured into the very earth. The raw emotion, the unanswered questions, the sheer number of lost lives, these forces have created an enduring paranormal tapestry visible to those sensitive enough to perceive it. And so the soldiers of Gettysburg continue their unseen fight, forever marching, forever suffering, on the hallowed ground that truly never sleeps. Their sorrow is etched into the ground. Want to explore more chilling stories of America's haunted past? Subscribe to Terror Tales TV for weekly, terrifying content. The Deep South holds its secrets close, burying them under centuries of cypress roots and heavy Spanish moss. But in St. Francisville, Louisiana, one home refuses to keep quiet. This is the Myrtles Plantation, a place of grand southern elegance and one of the most infamously haunted sites in America. Its foundation, it is a house of the dead, said to be host to at least 12 restless spirits. But to understand the hauntings, we must first unearth the tangled history that chained these souls to the bayou forever. The story begins in 1796 with General David Bradford, who fled here to escape an execution order for his role in the Whiskey Rebellion. He named his sanctuary Laurel Grove. Like all plantations of its era, its very existence was built upon the violent system of slavery. The true tragedy begins under the ownership of Judge Clark Woodruff. Though the legend claims he and his family met a gruesome end, history records something far more devastating. Yellow fever. Sarah Woodruff and 2 of her 3 young children succumbed to the disease that ravaged the South. It was a rapid, agonizing loss, a massive outpouring of grief and death that truly scarred the property's spiritual energy. The terrifying legend of the Myrtles belongs to Chloe. Though her name doesn't appear in historical records, her story defines the plantation's chilling reputation. The story claims Chloe, an enslaved woman, was caught eavesdropping on the judge. Her punishment was severe and public. Her ear was cut off. She hid her mutilation. Fearing she'd be sold off, Chloe planned a perverse act of redemption. She baked a cake, lacing it with a small amount of poisonous oleander. She believed she could make the poison work instantly. The mistress and the 2 children who died years earlier from fever. In the legend, they died that day from Chloe's treachery. The other slaves, fearing the master's wrath, carried out their own immediate justice. They hanged Chloe from an oak branch until she was dead, then dumped her body into the river. A violent end to a tragic life. The aftermath of Chloe's poisoning gave rise to another popular haunting, the haunted mirror. Southern tradition dictated that mirrors be covered upon death to prevent the spirit from being trapped within the reflective glass. But after the rapid, chaotic deaths, this one was allegedly missed. It is said the souls of the children and their mother were absorbed and sealed inside the glass. Visitors report seeing swirling, misty figures, often children's faces, and inexplicable handprints forming on the surface. This is an intelligent haunting, a psychic residue of the worst kind, an eternal prison for the innocent. Paranormal teams consistently capture evidence of figures inside the reflection. The only historically verified murder at the Myrtles came years later, in 1871. The victim was William Drew Winter, a lawyer and manager of the plantation. Details remain murky, but it is known that on a dark evening, he was shot on the front porch by an unknown assailant. Some research even links the assassination to his anti-Ku Klux Klan political stance. The legend claims that after the blast, Winter stumbled inside, dragging his wounded body up the grand staircase to reach his wife. He collapsed, dead, on the 17th step. Today, his struggle is endlessly replayed. Guests report hearing heavy, staggering footsteps ascending the stairs that abruptly stop at the 17th step. A chilling echo of Beyond the main figures, the Myrtles is a repository of ghostly activity. At least a dozen distinct spirits have been reported, including the ghostly children still playing on the gallery. A darker legend claims the plantation was built over an ancient Tunica Indian burial ground, leading to reports of a young Native American woman wandering the grounds. Sometimes seen practicing voodoo on sleeping guests, a menacing spirit seeking to impose her will on the living. Footsteps, voices, the scent of phantom perfume, and unexplained cold spots. The house is truly saturated with unspent energy. The Myrtles has been featured on virtually every major paranormal television show, and for good reason. The sheer volume of reported activity is undeniable. The most compelling visual evidence is the 1992 photo. Taken during an investigation, it clearly shows a ghostly, green-turbaned figure standing on the plantation grounds. Is this Chloe? Whether you believe the legends or the historical facts, the Myrtles Plantation stands as a monument to tragedy. It is a home that saw the full spectrum of human darkness, slavery, murder, disease, and fear. The spirits here are not just echoes of the past. They are the enduring memory of suffering, forever trapped between the beauty of the Southern dream and the blood-soaked reality of its history. The doors are open for tourists and overnight guests, but the ancient residents of the Myrtles Plantation are never truly ready to check out. Did the story of Chloe or the ghost of the 17th step send a chill down your spine? Tell us which spirit you think is the most active in the comments below.